born in a different time, in a different place. A truly wicked man. A man of letters. A man who never plays alone. A man called Stiglr. And that's what you get for wanting to.
Oh, sorry.
In a world
it won't
where...
happen again.
Could have prepped that better.
Hey, go ahead, Artie, go ahead.
Hey, everybody, welcome to the show. We have with us tonight, in addition to our usual co-host, Dancing Dan, the Dancing Man, the legend himself, Stiglr, Alan Dickerson, who we're going to talk to about his project on P500 with GMT, and probably some other stuff too. So, speaking of which, wargaming news you can use. GMT's starting their sale, I believe, on Tuesday. So go ahead and check their webpage out for the details on that.
Hey, Stiglr, thanks for being on, man.
Oh, no problem. You're helping me to, spur interest in the P500. So I certainly can't complain about that.
So it's a 728 pre-orders as of right now, and I think that's pretty good. It felt a few years ago kind of like GBACW, for those who don't know, Great Battles of the American Civil War series, begun back in the 1970s by the legendary late Richard Berg, and then brought with Berg to a couple of different publishers. He published at least one through TSR. You might be able to correct me on this, Stiglr. And I think he published some through Wargame Design. What was his company called? Do you remember?
I don't remember, but there were 2 or 3 games that he published with that little side company. I think that it was actually owned by him.
Mm-hmm.
And he kind of used that as a resting place when he was kind of between major companies. And he did the first version of Dead of Winter with that.
Mm-hmm.
He did a version of what would later be redone with GMT as Red Badge of Courage, and a couple of others.
Mm-hmm.
And then right around the turn of the century, I think it was 1999, that's when he landed at GMT and started with the chit pull iteration of the Terrible Swift Sword family.
That was actually going to be my question, because I don't have any of those interim games. I've got 3 or 4 of the SPI ones and all of the GMT ones now, and I don't know exactly when he pushed the button on that. So that was with first edition 3 Days of Gettysburg that it went to chit pull.
Yes. I believe the interim ones, and I can't remember the name of the company. I really can't.
Simulation
SDI.
Design.
There we go. Thank you, Meandering Mike. SDI.
At the video,
those were still the You Go, I Go iteration that was a direct descendant from Terrible Swift Sword. So they had a couple of different wrinkles, like the turn continuation system, where you never knew when a turn was going to end, and I guess were trading activations until some gating factor caused the end of the turn. I wasn't even involved in wargaming during that interim time, because I started my wargaming career when I was in high school in the 70s, and then I went to college right around 79, 80, and just got involved in other things. So I just kind of dropped out and didn't come back until about 2014. but I always kept all of my favorite war games in boxes, as I moved from place to place, and always had this crazy idea that when I reached retirement at a maximum, I would break these out,
Yeah.
get together with all my friends who still live in
Yeah.
LA,
Yeah.
and and play all these games, you know, unencumbered by adulting tasks and things like that. But
So,
yeah,
Alan, how come you were so hush hush on you designing games? I never knew. Usually, when you're on the comments, you're ready to roar and you want to kick some ass, but you seem to be a mild mannered.
We're looking for your next game being published by Decision Games.
You know what I'm saying?
well, there is a little bit of a story about that. I mean, everybody
Yeah, why
around
you
the
hush hush,
wargaming
man?
community, they know me, and they know I'm very opinionated, and and that I'm down on decision games, and I don't like solo gaming much, and yada yada yada. So I realize that I may rub some people the wrong way sometimes. So I really had to think long and hard about even putting my name right up front on the box, because I thought, well, there's probably a small minority of people who will just go, oh, this is Stiglr's game, I'm not buying that. And
Nah,
knowing that I
man.
had to go through P500, I thought about it, and I was persuaded to put my name on it. So I said, well, okay, if everybody
Well,
says
there's at
so.
least 728 people that don't object. So
Hey, I was extremely excited when I was doing a show and I'm saying there's a game out here, Sword and Bayonet, something, and I don't know who the designer is. It must be Mark Miklos or Ben Hull or something. And then when I found out it was you, I was like, yeah, come on. I didn't know.
Yeah.
Usually you got a big mouth, but not for this one.
Right. Yeah, and I during the early gestation of it, I kept quiet just because this is my very first design effort, and even though I'm working from a system that's very long in the tooth, and I don't have to, I I I almost don't even want to call myself the designer of it, because I'm working with systems that were hashed out long ago. I'm really more of a developer, and I'm just porting the system to a new set of battles. But that's the way it works out, that they term me the designer. So this is my very first design, so I didn't want to put a lot of pressure on myself by getting out there and talking about it a lot, and getting people to go, oh yeah, when's that going to be ready? When's that going to be ready? And then, find out, wow, I don't like any of these designs, and maybe I don't want to do it anymore. And then, have to backtrack and all of that. So I stayed pretty mum. I let a few people know, a few details, that I was working on something, but until I knew we were ready to go to P500, and it's pretty far along now.
Well,
I decided to wait.
How long has it been on the P500?
It's about 3 weeks now.
You
Yeah,
know
it's
what? That's pretty good. You're almost at 800, man. Bloody hell.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that has a story to it as well. I was talking with Dick Whitaker and some of the other people who are the movers and shakers around the GBACW landscape, and I was kind of asking them, what they thought about things like, like putting my name on the front of the box and
Well,
all
if you're
those
the
other.
designer, why wouldn't you want to put your name on the front of the box, Stiglr?
Well, I remember in the old days, SPI ran this little experiment where they wanted to see if the name of the designer would make any difference in sales. And so, they put out a bunch of games with the designer's name up front, like Eric
Yeah,
Goldberg's Kursk and things like that. And they found out that, for some designers, if you put Mark Herman on a box, you're going to sell a raft of them just because of Mark Herman
right,
or Herman Luttman,
right.
some of the luminaries. But, for somebody like me, a lot of people, they don't even know my name outside of Stiglr, right? So,
Well,
it's really not going to make that much of a difference.
Alan,
And
I'll tell you something. In 3 weeks, you went up to 700, and Herman Luttman with his a monster game that's coming up. I keep forgetting it all the time. Plum Island Horror
mhm,
didn't do 700 in the first 3 months, man.
yeah, well,
So you know what I'm saying?
that I think was a combination of just strange subject matter, and the game seems interesting, and I'm sure it's been helped a lot by having Herman's name associated with it. But it's kind of a toss up when you're talking about basically a zombie or a horror movie themed
As
game
opposed to a
as a
simulation like that.
as
Well,
opposed to a simulation.
I wonder to what effect the publishers and not just GNT but MMP too. I wonder what effect the publisher's existing audience for the games that they traditionally publish influences them trying something offbeat like that, right?
Right.
I mean, what was it? Wizard something that GMT did, and they ended up dropping it from P500 because it just wasn't moving fast enough.
Yeah.
And I gotta feel like if somebody else had done that, if somebody that's got more of an audience for fantasy games, they might have done a little better with it. And there's a number of other things on the P500 list right now, which I went through exhaustively last night on the show, that I think might fall into that same category. And every time like MMP wants to do like this is a light war game, nobody wants it.
Really?
Like because those people aren't buying stuff from MMP, right?
Right.
Probably being a little unfair, but not that unfair.
Yeah. And the other side of that story, with how much we talk about whatever and whose name is on the box and everything. The other wild card with this design is that it's been designed from the start with a marketing idea in mind, that being the idea of a starter kit for GBACW. And I thought that was another wild card because, on the one hand, we constantly have a lot of people asking us for tutorials and help getting started and all that stuff because GBACW does have a reputation for being a pretty chewy and detailed system, and it intimidates a lot of people. And it's kind of like one of those things where we're like, well, yeah, if you're going to take the Civil War down to the regimental level with any level of granularity or detail or accuracy, you're just going to get something that's, it's not going to be a beer and pretzels like, the 30 Years War quad or something like that. It's just, there's no way around it. So the idea for By Swords and Bayonets is to have a starter pack of battles where we reduce the forces significantly so that you have at most a division worth of forces. And in some of them, one side might only have a single brigade. And normally a division might be made up of 2, 3, maybe 4 brigades.
Are you talking about the scale of your game right now?
Yes. No, but now I'm talking about the scale of the games or the battles within the set. So normally, in a standard GBACW title on a big battle, like say Shiloh or Into the Woods, which was the last one published, on each side, on the Union side, you've got three corps, I think, or yeah, 2 large corps And on the Confederate side, you've got 3 small corps, and each one of those is composed of, 3 or 4, well, for the Union, maybe 5 or 6 divisions in one corps and 2 or 3 in the other one. For the Confederates, they've got a total of maybe 8 or 9 divisions. So you just got a lot to keep track of. And a lot of the system mechanics revolve around command control. It's a very key concept to the system that, before each hour turn begins, you go through a process of determining efficiency. And efficiency is just, in general, how well is your army performing for this 1 hour? And so you do a chit pull to determine how many potential activations each division might have over the course of that hour, and then you modify it by whether people are in or out of command, whether they're in proximity to to the overall leader, things like that. And you determine how many times each division might move that turn, and you put that number of activation markers in a cup all together, and then you just start picking them out one after the other. Some will be Union, some will be Confederate. One might be the random event marker, and you do that until the cup is empty, and then you do it all over again, and you start another turn.
Now, is that a mechanic you brought into that system?
No. That is part and parcel of the chit pull iteration of Great Battles of the American Civil War.
Now, did you change any mechanics at all, or you just went with what was there?
Yes. The full rules are supported by Swords and Bayonets, but as a byproduct of limiting the battles to a division at most, then you never have to worry about the chain of command all the way up to the corps level, right? So there's a certain part of the efficiency that you don't have to worry about.
So that's what you changed. Did you simplify it, or did you make it more chromy?
No,
he's saying that there's like the higher level command stuff that you simply don't need in those battles because they're smaller battles,
right? Because it's not there. So in other words, if in a normal GBACW game, every turn you trace a chain of command from your corps commanders down to their division commanders, and then those division commanders trace zone or line of command down to the brigadiers, and then the brigadiers down to the regiments, right? So you have to observe that entire chain of command, or you're going to start losing potential activations for being out of chain of command. But by Swords and Bayonets, because the division is the largest size of formation that you'll ever see on the map, you don't have to worry about the corps commanders, and also you don't get docked an activation because your corps commander is not on the map, right? Okay. So it's basically like you ignore some of the chain of command and the efficiency rules simply because they're just not operative in those battles.
Okay, I want to ask you questions like Entertainment Tonight questions before we.
Sure.
So first of all, let's answer John Stanley's question here. Do early war 1861 to 62 game require special rules due to very raw troops and hodgepodge of an old and or obsolete weapons?
Yes, there is a mechanic in all Great Battles of the American Civil War games where units can be classed as green. And so in particular, if you look at Red Badge of Courage and you look at First Bull Run, which was the first major battle of the entire war, almost every unit on the map is green. And let me tell you, it has a huge effect on things, because some of the things that you can take for granted with trained or experienced troops, like if you send them in for shock combat, hand-to-hand combat, they'll go. With a green unit, there's a special cohesion check they have to make that determines whether or not they'll just not go.
Right. Okay.
Right. So you'll see that in is it all of them? I think. No, you probably, you won't see that in Rappahannock Station, but I think in 3 of the battles, you'll definitely see that in play. As far as obsolete weapons, yes, there are weapons classes in all of the battles, and depending on whether or not you have muskets or rifles or even Sharps repeaters, where you get a benefit from having better technology, there are varying effects and effectivenesses of the weapons. Also, By Swords and Bayonets does have 1 or 2 special rules for specific weapons in specific cases. That being Mill Springs, which is one of the battles in the box. That battle was noted for the Confederates having major problems with wet powder in their obsolete squirrel guns and smoothbore weapons, and there were instances of soldiers who were seen swinging their weapons against trees and destroying them out of frustration because they wouldn't fire. So there are some special rules in the Mill Springs battle that make that a event, a random event that might happen. It's
Stiglr,
not.
what's the complexity of that game, of yours?
It's going to be 7.
Seriously?
Yeah.
It's about right.
It's 7.
I think, right?
Yeah. Like I said, the system is crunchy and it is detailed, but a lot of it's mostly because there are just a lot of rules to remember. Most of the rules, though, when you get into them, are based on just common sense and physics. So if you know anything about that
Common
period,
sense?
if you know anything about the Civil War, you'll understand the spirit behind each rule, and it will help you remember it, so that you're not thinking that something impossible could be happening.
Now, how did you get the gig with GMT?
Well, ever since I returned to wargaming, I kind of just naturally fell back in with the GBACW crowd. And then, as part of that, I volunteered. I threw myself under the bus, and I volunteered to create all the vassal modules for all of the games.
Okay,
so I became the vassal guy.
So that was your in. Okay.
That was my in. So as a result of that, once I got involved with Death Valley, which was in production at the time, and I started working on all of the playtest vassal modules for that, and that was a lot of work because there were 10 battles in that box. And so I got to know Greg Laubach and Dick Whitaker and Bill Byrne and all of the the movers and shakers in there. And because I was doing all this production work with the graphics, to build the modules, I just kind of got interested in all things production for the system.
Right.
And so that naturally started leading me down the path of, maybe I could, build one of these things. And so I started training myself in, the dark arts of Adobe Illustrator. And thanks, David. I appreciate it. Illustrator and improving my chops at Photoshop. I've been using Photoshop for many years. InDesign, all these different things that they use to put together all of the games. And then I started learning some of the things about the actual design and how to do research for your order of battle, how to start to, turn
Yeah,
all of
but
the information.
you're in, and Alan, please take this question with in the way I want to say it. You being in with GMT because you're doing all these vassal modules. And what's the term? Try to take this question. Anyways, understand what I'm going to try to say. You being there and suggesting.
I have no idea what he's trying to say.
Whatever. You being there and suggesting a game. Is it easier because you're there already? And I don't want to belittle your design, and I don't want to belittle Alan Dickerson. You know what I'm trying to say?
I understand what you're trying to say.
Or are they as hard? Or were they look at your? Are they going to look at your design and still scrutinize it?
Recognize that this is not a design that's just like materialized out of thin air, right? It's not a whole new game system. There's an ecosystem around GBACW already. There's people playing it. There's I guess we're calling Dick the honcho of GBACW at this point. And
yeah.
Frankly, it seems to me like the whole GBACW scene has been pretty much revitalized over the last couple of years with several really good new releases. All the old stuff's now out of print. I think even Twin Peaks is still out of print. That thing hung around for years. But new games in the pipeline, new games in P500. So there's this like support network there, right? To kind of help get things moving, make suggestions, and just know people, right? Just to make the connections. That's got to be worth something.
Yes. So, and Alan, the way it happened was once I had the original idea, which wasn't a full project at all, and that's a story that I'm saving for the designer's notes in the box. But to make a long story short, when I had an idea, I went and talked to Dick, and he made the introduction for me to Tony Curtis at GMT to shop my idea. So yes,
didn't he know you by name already for doing all the vassal stuff, man?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and we had actually met in person. I found myself traveling to North Carolina when I was still working for Daimler Trucks. We had an event out there, and so we all flew in there. And I knew that Dick lived in North Carolina, so I sent him a few emails, and he said, "Oh, you're going to be in town." So he drove a couple of hours out of his way to meet me one evening at this restaurant where we were having a company event, but it was also open to the public at the same time. So he dropped in, and we actually met in person and talked a bit, and got to know each other. Dick's he's a great guy. He really is. He's the perfect person to have convinced Richard Berg, to sell the rights to the TSS franchise. And as part of that deal, Richard Berg told him in very Godfather-like fashion, "You know what you're going to do for me? You're going to redo Bloody April." And that became Into the Woods. So, he kept his promise, and, by all accounts, Into the Woods has been very, very well received indeed.
And isn't Bloody April a Lee Brimacombe Wood World War I game also?
It is.
Yeah, so there's two games called, I hate this. There's two games called Bloody April, one of which is the World War I air game, which actually looks really neat, and I'd like to have it.
Yeah.
And the other is the classic TSR, not TSR, but SPI Bloody April, which is 78, 79, 80,
yep,
something like that. So, so yeah, there's two games called Bloody April, which they both take place in April. Other than that, they're not similar at all.
Right.
I wasn't a very big fan actually of Bloody April. I bought it when it came out in 1978, and I was really, really happy with that gorgeous box that it was in it. But there were some things about it on the inside and the rules that just made it really difficult to play. There was a lot of bookkeeping in it, and so I
Shiloh's
was
a
never
bit of a
big fan
difficult
of
battle too, isn't it?
It is, and Dick really did a great job, I think, of revitalizing Shiloh in Into the Woods. He had some wonderful ideas, and it has a completely different feel.
Stiglr, here's a great Canadian question. This is a good Canadian question.
Yes. Not exactly IT. I am by trade an instructional designer, and also I had a earlier career in advertising as a copywriter and idea person. But most of the clients that I worked for were in the software or high tech arena. So I kind of have some roots in IT, and can't really get away from it very far. Even in my instructional design capacity, I'm still doing a lot of work with learning management systems, LMSs, and things like that. They are the bane of my existence right now.
So now, Stiglr,
can confirm.
So since you've designed this game now, and it seems to be doing well on the P500. Sincerely, it seems to be doing well. Have you caught
Can't
the
wait
bug,
till it shows up on my doorstep in 2028.
I was going to ask you, do you have a say in artwork? Do you have a say in any designing stuff of the box? And did you catch the bug now? Are you designing your next game?
Okay. Well, let's take that one at a time. The influence that I have on the actual design is, obviously very tempered by the fact that, things like the counter design, the graphics that go on the maps, the way things are done, all that's really been decided for me. But within those parameters, I am trying my best to take some of the weight off of the GMT art department. And when I turn in the project to the art department, I'm planning to have stuff well in hand so that I can just send it to them and tell them, hey, you could change a lot of things if you want to, but I'm banking on the fact that maybe they're going to be thinking, well, we've got 70 other games in the art department, and if this one can go through really easily with only a few changes, who are we to look a gift horse in the mouth? So I actually do have a box design. I've got designed players aids and things like that are set up and specific to my game, all those sort of things. And the maps, of course, I've drawn the maps, and there I'm expecting Charlie Kibler to do his magic act. There's just something he does. It's almost like the special spice pack for Kentucky Fried Chicken, where it's like nothing else tastes like it. Charlie Kibler does that with maps. You know, when I was working on Death Valley, all through the playtesting process, Greg Lovick had what I thought were print-ready maps that we were using in the playtest Vassal modules. Then when it was done, we sent it to the GMT art department. Then we got the proofs back, and I had to, take the finished stuff and put it into the modules again for the release versions.
So how long was
And that
all of this, man?
Oh, it took about 3 years, I think. I was involved in the play testing and proofing and all of that. And I was just amazed when we got back the proofs of the maps, because here I thought, oh, they're just going to take what Greg submitted and just print it like that. But Charlie had gone in and he had just done subtle little things that just, wow, we're looking at it like, whoa, look at this. So I'm hoping he will be able to do that on my maps as well.
Man, you should have been a spy, you know that, because you just don't talk. For 3 years, years, you said nothing.
Well, for one, for Death Valley, it wasn't my project, so I wasn't gonna speak out of turn, certainly. But it was a long project because Greg Lovick just kept adding more and more games to it. When I got started, I believe there were 4 games for Death Valley, and I thought, oh, okay, I can do 4 modules. So I said, sure, yeah, I'll do that. And then after I got those 4, we're gonna add a couple more battles, and then okay, and then I did modules for those, and then then we're gonna add, and by the time we were done, there were 8 modules and 10 battles in that box.
So how long does it
and
take?
And then they went and did the expansion, which just came out. They added 4 more, so it's like wow.
So Alan, how long does it take you to make one Vassal scenario module, or whatever you want to call it?
One module, depending obviously on the size of the battle, it can take anywhere from, say, a couple of weekends to a month. For my specific battles, I'd say about a weekend, because reduced forces, small map, all of that stuff, there's a lot less to do than if you're trying to vassalize 3 days of Gettysburg, right? So a lot of vassal module production is, you create the shell and the design, and then you've got to basically touch every piece and make, assign it characteristics and put it in the right place. And then after all of that is done, then you've got to, do your setups so that everything's on the map and the players can choose a scenario or a game and, just hit a button and say go.
So it's every single piece you have to do, every single chit you gotta do. So what happens if it's a monster game, man, and it's got 20?
Then it takes a long time.
Doesn't matter. You got to do it for everyone. Now, it is made easier by the use of what they call prototypes. So you can set up kind of mini templates for a specific type of unit that is going to repeat.
I was like scripting, like.
Not really. Not really. It's creating a attribute that you will attach to a piece. Like, say, for instance, you create a prototype for Union infantry, right? So, and to that you attach, all the things about how it fires, how it moves, all these attributes that are central to a Union infantry, as, say, opposed to a Confederate infantry unit, which you'll have another prototype for. then once you have prototypes built out for both sides infantry, both sides artillery, both sides cavalry, both sides commanders at various levels, after you have all those prototypes built out, then for each individual piece, all you have to do is attach the prototype to it. So, for every one of, say, 1,000 Union regiments that you would find in 3 Days of Gettysburg, you would attach the prototype for Union infantry to them. So, but still, when you're assigning all that, that still means every single regiment, every piece, you've got to touch it and assign it and name it properly and all of that. So yeah,
Okay.
you do end up touching every single piece, even in a
Now,
monster.
I'm not very well versed at all in Vassal, okay, or any tabletop simulator and all that. In Vassal, you have stats on your chits, right? It can only move, let's say, 3 hexes, but you can move it 4 in Vassal. It's not going to stop you,
right?
from.
There's no rule enforcement in Vassal.
So then,
And
why all the coding per chit?
Well,
can't you just take a chit and move it?
yes, you can. And
yeah, but who cares about all the coding behind the chits?
Well,
so is there a backside to the chit? Because some games have a backside.
Yes.
Most games have a reverse side.
That's right.
And some games
so
don't.
there's a flip command that you can use to turn the unit over. And in Great Battles of the American Civil War, for a combat unit, that means basically when the unit is disordered, you flip it over. So to make the game look in Vassal like a physical copy, then when a unit is disordered by fire combat, you use the command to flip it over, and it appears to flip over on the map. You can see the little yellow diamond with the D in it, and you know that it's disordered. So yes, you have to. All the coding makes that happen.
So what's he saying here, Stiglr? Context menus for the chits.
Yes.
So when you right-click on a chit, you get a little menu. You flip the chit over, send it to the dead pile. Variety of standard. I don't want to say standard because this actually isn't standardized in Vassal.
Right.
But
it is system specific.
Yeah.
And for instance, in the Vassal modules for GBACW, I usually have most of them set up so that you can put little overlays onto the chit as mnemonics for when the unit fires. And also there are some banners and things that I put on and around counters to keep you from having to actually put a marker on the map and increase the size of the stacks. So if you're playing a physical game and you do fire combat and you roll a natural 5, you have an ammo issue. You're either going to be low on ammo or out of ammo, right? And so in a physical game, you would get a low ammo or no ammo marker out of the box and put it on the unit.
Yeah, right.
In the Vassal module, I have it set up to where you have an ammo problem. You just right-click the unit, you tell it low ammo, and then there'll be a thin little banner on one side that's orange that says -2 for ammo. And then if you hit that one again, it'll be red and say no ammo or out of ammo. So doing it that way takes a marker counter off of the Vassal display. Helps keep things tidier.
The amount of work that's involved in doing so, it's like, why don't you write the Bible by hand? Start writing it by hand again. You know what I'm saying? It's like, bloody hell.
Yeah, it's not that difficult. There are some things within the code structure in Vassal that I won't even touch. you can do some really, really crazy and amazing things and automate things in Vassal, but there you really do have to get into the Java code, and I don't go very far into the Java code. But there's another layer of simpler things that, recur in a lot of games that you can easily make work. You just have to know how to do it. And in most cases, the way you learn is by deconstructing. If you have a game and you know that it's going to be similar to another game that has a Vassal module, the best way to learn to do it is to download the module on the game that has mechanics you want to base your game on, and go into the Vassal editor and just poke around in there and find out, well, how did they do that? How did they assign this? Where did they put that? That sort of thing. And then just bring it to your design and boom, it'll operate the same way.
Hey,
So
Mike.
it's not that difficult. And yes, Joel Toppin, if you look on YouTube, put Joel Toppin and Vassal into your search, and you'll come upon his series of tutorial lessons on how to create things in Vassal. And that's how I
Now,
learned. That's how I got started.
Alan, then remember I was talking about you can move the shit. Let's say it moves 3 spaces, and you can move it 4, and there's nothing stopping you from moving it 4.
Right.
Can something be built into that for stopping it to move, or is that some other crazy thing?
I won't say that it can't, because, like I said, I don't know how deep the code goes. But I will say that it is not intended that Vassal have artificial intelligence or have it enforce the rules.
Now, is there a reason for that?
I'm sorry?
Yeah, it makes Vassal more flexible, because the module designers don't have to worry about enforcing the rules for the most part. And despite what Dan thinks, Vassal is what I would consider a low-code solution to make modules at the basic level.
Jesus.
I mean, it's not entirely untechnical, but you don't really have to write extensive amounts of Java code or anything like that to build a basic Vassal module. A lot of Vassal modules stop at the context menu, the right-click context menu, and everything runs through that. Relatively few.
There are some things that I've seen done, and I guess my best example was when I was working on modules for the Central Front series, the old SPI Modern Operational series. And if you know anything about that system, it had a ingenious mechanic called the friction point, where units would, as a result of combat or movement or any kind of operations, they would amass friction points. And the unit would operate at full capacity and full power until it got to its friction point level. And if it went past that, it was just destroyed, right? So it was kind of all or nothing. So you had to manage your friction points. And the way that they did it with the physical game was there was a series of black markers with numbers on them that would be the friction point level, and you would have to put one of those on each stack. Now, that created some problems in playability. And then in the Vassal module, I was working with a guy to vassalize the modules, and he came up with a coded solution to that, where we put the markers as overlays on the corners of the counter. So there was a black corner of the counter with a white number in it for friction points that you could, use right clicks and, add friction points, and it would total them up. And they would be, overlays over one corner instead of a marker that you had to clutter up the map with. And
Right.
this other fellow, he took it a step further, and he developed through different rules and some of the prototypes and all of that. He developed a method where when it was time to do the friction point removal segment, which is where you adjust all of the friction point markers on the map at one time, and you also in the physical game have to flip over the counter to reflect that it hasn't acquired any friction points for the new turn. A very laborious process. He set it up to where all you had to do was identify and mark the units that could not recover friction points because they were out of supply or isolated. And then you would click one button on the interface and it would do all of the friction point calculations and recovery in about 3 seconds. One button. It was just bip. You would wait about 3 seconds and boom, it was done. And that was, it was remarkable. I have no idea how he did it. I kind of saw some of the code and I kind of understand kind of the concept of how he did it, but how he did it, there was no way I could have come up with that.
So, Alan, I don't know if this is another stupid question there, but why not Tabletop Simulator?
I have no reason to say anything bad about Tabletop Simulator. I have never used it, so it's the more the merrier. And Vassal, I think, has more modules and a greater overall audience, more market share, I guess you would call it. So that's why most people gravitate toward it. But some people do like Tabletop Simulator, or Sun Tzu is another system that I've heard.
Right.
And Sun
From
Tzu.
the Dark Ages.
Yeah, right. Sun Tzu, I've heard, you can create a module really, really super quickly. I don't know how it does it, so much faster than Vassal, but that's what I hear it does. Mike's got a comment there. It's not great for handling stacks.
No. Also doesn't handle anything other than live play. So you can't do play by mail or anything like that. So
yeah, and Vassal's great for, supporting all three modes. So you can have solo mode for people that want that. You can have live mode where you meet on a server and you play in real time, and both players see what one player is doing at the time. If he's the active player and he's moving a counter across the map, both people see it in real time. And also play by email, where it's kind of works like an old VCR. So you record your session of moving markers and making comments and setting up attacks, and sometimes even going through with the attacks. And then when you get to a stopping point where you need your opponent to react to you, or maybe it's just his turn next, you stop the log file and it creates a pretty small file that you send by email to your opponent. Your opponent gets that. Excuse me. He opens Vassal. He plays through everything that you recorded, and he can also break in and fix something if you made a mistake or something like that. And then he dovetails off of the end of your log file and creates one of his own, and you go back and forth. So it's like the old play by email system, only you don't have to use the New York Stock Exchange to resolve combat.
So if in your playthrough, when you send the file, he can actually get into your file and fix mistakes that you've done.
Yes.
Therefore, and this is ridiculous, a chance for cheating is great.
Yes.
Yeah, but you can see everything that the other person did when you go back to the log.
This is all recorded. It's all recorded
Yeah.
in the,
it's really just a step sequence, so it like tacks onto the module, right? Which has the map and where the pieces are and all that, and you just step your way through it. You know, this piece moves from this hex to this hex. There's an attack roll here. You can see what the attack roll was. It's some modules will give you the attack results off the CRT too. That's a little bit more advanced. A lot of them don't do that, but you can see exactly what they did. So, I mean, if you're playing with those people, find new people. But
yeah, I'm just saying,
you could, you know, if somebody does something truly nefarious, you could catch them in the log file.
Right. And you know, because of the fact that you can like break in and fix something, by doing that, you start another log file, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't keep playing through and you start another log file, then anything after where you broke in would presumably be lost, right? But the original player would still have his copy that he sent to you, so you know you have a fallback. And also, you know, it's not cheating proof. But again, you know, to what ARDWULF said, you know, if I have to worry about my opponent's cheating, then I'm just not gonna.
Yeah, no, I know.
You know, I've had to play games of flat top with an opponent I have, and you know, we would play those games like on Saturdays for 2 hours at a time. It would take us several months to get through, you know, the Battle of Midway or Coral Sea or something like that. And, you know, with flat top, because it's double blind, you have to assume that your opponent is on the level. And, you know, if I thought that he was cheating, it was like, why would I bother?
Yeah,
you know,
I know.
To play. Let's see here. One advantage with TTS: when you're play testing, you can easily make game pieces while you're playing. Oh, that's interesting.
Now,
I guess you can kind of do that.
You know, that's I've always said that, you know, it's just different, right? But because it's different, it's better suited to different types of games. And that's why we've really seen, although there's plenty of support now for tabletop simulator hex and counter stuff, it tends to be certain flavors of hex and counter stuff like the SPI quads and that kind of stuff, rather than the heavier, counter heavy, larger games that you might be more inclined to play by mail.
You play a lot of Vassal, Artie?
Some. Not that much, but some. It's an invaluable tool, though.
And they every single Vassal module comes without rules. Is that right? In terms of learning how to play the game, is that right?
Yeah, you're not going to learn how to play the game just from looking at the Vassal module.
Right.
Some modules automate, as Alan mentioned. Some Vassal modules automate a lot. Right. There's in the GTS modules, for example, which are very good modules. There's a complete combat calculator where you click on the unit, you highlight the units it's attacking, and you click on the target unit, and it calculates everything for you. Click this, click that, and you get a result. It gives you the CRT result and everything. So it's pretty slick.
Yeah. Now, actually, with Vassal, there is a gentleman's agreement that when you play a game with Vassal,
you own the board game.
Yeah,
somebody playing
that one of the players owns the game. The same, you know, as if you play with a physical copy, you know, both people don't have to own the game to play. So the same thing is in play with Vassal, because, you know, some publishers were very, very worried about the potential of Vassal to just basically, you know, flood the market with free digital copies of their games. And so what Vassal did to mitigate that was to kind of create this expectation that players would not would not do that. And to further that, some module designers got in the habit of making sure that they left something vital out of the module, like
the
say the
CRT.
player's aid and the CRT, and they would assume, hey, you've got your battle book or your charts and tables in the game that you own, and so all you have to do is just use the dice button and refer to your chart, and then you'll know what to apply to the game. But speaking of rules, there's nothing really stopping a module designer, if they want to
upload the rules and
putting a PDF actually inside the module, because a Vassal module really is just a glorified zip file or 7Z file. It's an archive file. It just has a different suffix, vmod on it, and you can get into it with any kind of an archival tool like WinZip or something like that, and you can embed instructions, rules, charts, tables, and things like that, even if they're not in the interface of the Vassal module. So,
Alan, I've got a last question because we're finished here.
Oh, okay.
Have you ever seen a Vassal module with a PDF file of the rules in it?
Yes. Yes, I have.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a lot of Vassal modules.
What happened here?
I don't know.
We got shuffled around on the screen.
We got shuffled around, man.
All right, folks. We are out of time. I've got a bunch of stuff I got to get done tonight in preparation for leaving for Compass Expo at 6 a.m. tomorrow.
Ooh.
So,
and
Dan,
so people, let's see.
Thanks, Dan, and thanks, Alan. I don't know what Dan's monkeying around with, but I'm sure whatever is happening, it is Dan's fault.
and for people who didn't see the
that's
opener,
a safe guess.
For people who didn't see the opener, stick around because I got the opener doing the ending, if that makes any sense. Alan, stick around.
All right.
Born in a different time, in a different place, a truly wicked man, a man of letters, a man who never plays alone, a man called
Stiglr.